Hey guys! While fencing and everything else is shut down, I've been trying to think about some content to put out there to help everyone stay a little more engaged. I wanted something that would be quick and easy to digest, but also something that might make you think about fencing in ways you haven't before. What I came up with is a short video series I've decided to call One Touch, Three Lenses. The idea is that each video will examine a single fencing touch and break it down through three different perspectives or lenses. I think a lot of fencers, especially newer fencers, struggle with watching fencing video, and I think a big reason is that they don't know what to look for when they watch. Most bouts have a lot going on, and they can happen at high speeds that make analysis an overwhelming prospect. Instead of trying to take in everything that's happening at once, I think it's helpful to watch and rewatch a given touch, with each rewatch focusing on a different aspect of the action. So with that in mind, let's look at our three lenses. First up is the technical lens. This is all about what is actually happening and how well it's technically executed. For everyone who struggles to identify what's happening on screen, this is the place to start. If you can't determine whether your opponent is making a parry or a counterattack, it'll be difficult to exploit their defense, and if you can't execute a parry or a lunge with proper technique, even a good strategy can fail. Technique is the first thing that fencers learn, and bad technique can be a thorn in your side for decades. This is the lens that will identify actions, examine technical errors, and point to technical details that affect the touch in question. The second lens is the tactical lens. Tactics have to do with reading your opponent's intention and choosing an action that will thwart or exploit that intention. In other words, tactics explain why a fencer chose that particular action. Unlike technique, which flows more from muscle memory and rote practice, fencers have a high degree of conscious control over their tactical choices. So when I give advice during a bout, that advice is usually tactical in nature, because it's the easiest information for a fencer to digest and put to use quickly. Technique is difficult or impossible to correct on the fly. If a fencer has the bad habit of pumping their arm, for example, telling them to stop during a bout is not likely to help. It might take weeks or months of intentional practice at the club to correct that habit. But if you tell a fencer to stop attacking and focus on defense, or to change their simple lunge into a compound attack, i.e. a tactical change, they can usually make that change in real time. For many, the tactical game is the most interesting and rewarding part of the sport. So our tactical lens will take a look at the intentions, decisions, and the general mind game between the two fencers. The third and final lens is all about timing. Timing, of course, is the when of an action. Let's say you have flawless technique and a killer tactical idea. The touch isn't yours yet. You still have to choose the perfect moment in time and space to execute your action. And to make matters more difficult, your opponent is trying to do the same thing, so you have to find a moment that's not only right for your action, but wrong for theirs. Of the three, timing is easily the most difficult to teach. Of course, there are loads of drills that practice timing, and some good attempts to systematize the concept, but you still have to feel the timing in the moment, and that only comes from practice, practice, practice. Through this lens, we'll explain why one fencer chose the right timing, and the other fencer chose wrong. Okay, the touch we're looking at in this video is from a bout between Sang-Young Park, the reigning Olympic champion, and Paulo Pizzo, a 2011 and 2017 world champion. Here it is. Alright, did you catch it? Check it out again from a different angle on the instant replay. Let's break it down. To start, let's apply our technical lens and talk about what happened. Park is the one who scored, but the attack came from the right, so we'll start there. Pizzo's attack is a flesh, more or less, a straight attack with no blade work and no extra steps. From a technical viewpoint, that's pretty straightforward. Park's defense has a few more steps, but isn't overly complicated either. I'll call your attention to three things he does during the touch. First, he begins with an advanced prep. Remember that for later. And then pretty much simultaneously, he squats and makes a counterattack to the chest. I picked this touch because it was technically simple. Here's two Olympians proving that you can score a critical touch with basic technical actions, so long as the tactics and timing are in place. Still, basic technique matters. When he goes for the touch, you can see that Park is making a straight, full extension, maximizing his reach. That's a fundamental that serves fencers at all levels of the sport. There's a few more things we can say about Pizzo's flesh. First, you can see that he doesn't open up fully, although some of that has to do with Park collapsing the distance. Second, you'll see that his point would absolutely have been on target if Park hadn't ducked, which makes the squat a critical part of the action. we'll revisit that too. And finally, notice how his feet never actually cross, like in a traditional flesh. This is more like a flunge, and it's a Paolo Pizzo idiosyncrasy. By holding back somewhat, he's often able to pull off that last-second parry or remise. The trade-off is that his attack doesn't have the same kind of follow-through in the event that the opponent takes distance quickly. Before we move on, I'll point out the difference in technique that we saw before the touch even happened. Check out this shot. Despite actually being the taller fencer, Paolo Pizzo is crouching significantly lower than Park. Notice also the difference in their hand position. Park's arm is bent and relaxed, while Pizzo's arm is already reaching halfway out. Pizzo actually spends most of his bouts fencing in this aggressive crouch position. It makes him ready to attack at all times, and it hides the moment that his attack is about to start, because he doesn't have to crouch or extend before launching a powerful attack. Park is in a much more balanced position, ready to attack but also ready to change direction and defend. In this case, those positions turned out to be good predictors of what happens next. Let's shift gears to our tactical lens. To evaluate the tactics at hand, we first have to assess the bout situation. Park is down by 1 touch in the final period, with time and touches starting to run out. In this position, he has to score a single light. That means that any action he selects not only has to score, but also has to avoid a crippling double touch. Now, the general trade-off in epee fencing is that a counterattack is the fastest possible defense, but also makes you more likely to incur a double touch. That might not be a problem if you have the lead, but Park needs a clean touch here. A parry riposte, on the other hand, is theoretically safer since you control the opponent's blade, but it's slower. It requires more specific action from the opponent, and it might open you up if the other fencer reads your intent. This is where the duck or squat comes in. By getting low, Park has the benefit of a speedy counterattack, but also removes his target from Pizzo's line of attack. This is the same principle as when a fencer angulates to the hand, simultaneously attacking the opponent's target and removing yours. The potential downside is that Park becomes totally locked in place the moment he squats, so it only works because he successfully read Pizzo's intention. We'll come back to that concept shortly. Now, you might be wondering, why is Park defending at all? After all, he's the one who needs to score. I like this touch because it shows that the losing fencer doesn't necessarily have to attack. A lot of fencers have it in their head that they must attack if they are losing, or that they shouldn't attack when they have the lead, but these guys show otherwise. In fact, Park is so committed to defense on this touch that he spends 1 minute and 43 seconds looking for the right moment. That's right, this touch began in the first period, spent 1 minute in the second period, and lasts 8 seconds into the final period. Fencers, take note. Instead of rushing to immediately score that essential touch, Park slowed the bout down and searched for the perfect moment. So where did Park get the idea to defend in the first place? How does he know what Pizzo is about to do? Well, there's a few answers. First, he can see the same technical details that we noticed earlier. Pizzo is crouched, extended, and ready to launch. Second, he can rely on the history of the bout. During the first period, Pizzo showed that he was ready, willing, and able to go for an attack, and Park hasn't forgot. But most importantly, Park has spent the last minute and 43 seconds experimenting and testing Pizzo's responses. Notice how he makes small preps in and out of distance, and observes the reaction. This actually performs double duty. Park is gathering intel, but also planting the seed in Pizzo's mind that a good opportunity may be coming. At the critical moment, Park makes an especially big prep, and Pizzo takes the bait. Now, to understand exactly why that bait is so sweet, let's switch to our timing lens. To understand the timing here, we have to think about attacks. Almost every fencing touch revolves around one fencer or the other making an attack, and in epee, a large percentage of the bout involves both fencers searching for that perfect opportunity. In order to attack effectively, you have to find a moment in timing where you are prepared to attack, and your opponent is unprepared to respond. This can look a few different ways, but I think most people are on board with that general concept. Here's a more complicated puzzle. In order to defend, you have to present what seems to be a perfect opportunity, but actually isn't. If the opportunity doesn't seem to be perfect, the opponent won't attack at all, and if it actually is perfect, you'll be hit. In our touch, this is Park's dilemma. In order for Park to offer the right bait, he has to understand the timing that Pizzo is searching for, so let's break down the timing of Pizzo's attack. When I think about timing, I think about 3 critical moments in time to launch an attack. The vast majority of successful attacks will occur in one of these 3 moments, so these are useful to take on board. The first moment is a prep attack. This is when a fencer prepares into distance with an advance or a half step, and if the opponent does not retreat sufficiently, launches an attack. The second moment is foot tempo. Like the name implies, this is about the timing of the feet. An attack in foot tempo is launched while the opponent is in the middle of a forward step, preventing them from changing direction. The third moment is taking over the attack. This moment occurs after the opponent's attack comes to a stop. If a fencer successfully retreats from that attack, they can immediately launch their own attack while the opponent is overextended or beginning to recover. Each of these moments could easily be its own video, so drop a comment if that's something you'd like to see. The moment that Pizzo goes for on our touch is foot tempo. He wants to attack into Park's preparation, which makes sense for a few reasons. For one, Pizzo is already geared up to attack at a moment's notice, with his weight shifted forward and his point extended. But more importantly, foot tempo tends to be the best option when the opponent is faster than you. The other two moments require a combination of distance and speed to outmaneuver your opponent, but a flesh into the opponent's foot tempo adds their speed to your attack. Pizzo isn't slow by any means, but Park is 12 years younger and exceptionally quick. Timing is a tool that can help overcome the speed differential, but it can also become predictable. Park has seen Pizzo find this timing repeatedly in the bout, and on this touch, he uses the timing to his advantage. Let's look again at how Park sells the moment. At this point, he already has his tactic in mind. It just needs to be set up. Seconds before the touch, he makes a very small prep, and then a much larger one to invite Pizzo. This is intentional. By contrast, the small prep makes the invitation seem that much more inviting. And Park goes all in, giving Pizzo a substantial opportunity to attack. Pizzo actually reads the timing pretty well, but the surprise of the squat is enough to thwart his attack and turn on the red light that Park desperately needed. So there you have it. 3 different lenses that all come together to explain a single touch. Hopefully you got something out of this video. Next time, we'll be looking at a touch from another bout, so keep an eye out for that. We might look at another international bout, or we might take apart a touch from one of our fencers. Comment below if there's a fencing concept you'd like to see explored in a video. Stay safe, guys, and stay tuned.